Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now. We got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this. My best friend and I are quarantining at our apartment together. She's trans and has had trouble growing her hair out, so she wears wigs. She has some really cute ones in other colors that she wears for fun and stuff. But she has a standard everyday wig she wears most of the time. Lola never got the traditional girly childhood, so we've been making one for her in quarantine. We built a fort in the living room, have been making friendship bracelets, playing summer camp-style games. It's a lot of fun. Last week, Lola mentioned to me that she wanted to start a quarantine diary so that she could document her experiences for future generations. I actually thought it was really cool, and then we got on the topic of journaling and I told her about my first diary. One of those flismy lock diaries that every girl had as a kid. We bought matching ones as part of our Give Lola Her Childhood Back crusade. They took a little while coming in, but we got them on Friday. Saturday night, some of our friends from college decided to do an impromptu girls' night in. Lola was in the shower, so I answered the Zoom without her. Lola is not out to anybody at our college and I respect that. This is her fresh start and she has a right to decide when she wants to come out to these people, if at all. I know I wouldn't 100% trust some of the people at our school with something as personal as this. We were talking about what we've been doing in quarantine and I mentioned that we had gotten the diaries. I said it was for the nostalgia and they wanted to see the diaries. We left the box in Lola's room, so I went in to show them. Lola and I go into each other's rooms all the time. We're basically sisters to one another, and it's just about second nature. When we were younger, we had keys to each other's houses. I didn't think anything of it. I flipped the camera to show the diaries and didn't flip it back. I got distracted by a cute choker on her dresser and forgot that the camera was flipped back / there was anything to hide. They knew Lola has worn wigs out to parties / the club / etc., but her everyday wig was right out in plain view, and one of our nosier friends asked what the new wig was. I completely blue-screened and someone else realized that it was Lola's hair. I genuinely had nothing to say. They were asking why Lola wore a wig and I had no explanation. I didn't want to out her. Someone else came to the conclusion that Lola must have cancer or alopecia or some other horrible thing that causes hair loss. They've decided that she was just too embarrassed to say, and they all started going on about poor Lola, etc. I just didn't know what to say, and I said it wasn't my place to confirm / deny. I hung up and immediately told Lola. I apologized profusely, and I know how badly I I feel so guilty about it. But, understandably, she's upset. Now, she's being forced to decide whether or not to out herself. Lola, understandably, doesn't want to lie about having some serious disease, and people are already trying to show support. At the same time, though, she doesn't want to have to come out. I don't know what to do. I want to support her, but she doesn't want to even see me right now. My sister Amanda never met her bio mom. My dad raised her alone until she was barely 1. My dad and my mom got married in 1992. Amanda knew that my mom wasn't her bio mother. She started pressuring my dad for information on her mom when she was around 17. My dad always gave her vague answers and refused to talk about her bio mom, which put a strain on their relationship. Enters our uncle and revealed the family secret. Apparently, Amy's mom wanted an abortion. She was 19. But my dad and his parents were able to bribe her. They offered her money if she followed up with the pregnancy. And she accepted. My grandparents sold one of their houses and gave her half of that money to Amy's mom when the pregnancy was viable. And the other half she received when she waived her parental rights over Amy to let my mom adopt her when she was 4. My uncle wasn't supposed to tell her that. My grandparents were furious. Amy stopped her crusade to meet her bio mom, and her relationship with my dad went back to normal. Amy never mentioned her bio mom again. Dad got her into therapy after that. A month ago, Amy found out that she was pregnant. The pregnancy was an accident. She switched birth controls. The problem being, Amy is about to start her surgical residency and her hours are insane. It is basically impossible to raise a baby while working in that rhythm, so she wanted an abortion. The problem is that Mark, her fiancé, 6 years together, wanted her to keep the baby. It caused a big fight. In a move to convince Amy to keep the baby, Mark told Dad about this. Until that point, no one in our family knew about this. Dad talked with her, and they got into an enormous fight. Amy got the abortion 10 days ago. Mark ended up breaking up with her. She is obviously really sad. My dad was acting like a jerk. He was pretending that Amy didn't exist. He didn't want to talk or see her. So on Christmas Day, we were exchanging gifts. When everyone had already finished giving each other gifts, Dad got up and gave Amy her present. He gave her an envelope in front of everyone and told her to open it. It was 3 pictures with something written on the back, a name, an address, and a phone number. Dad told her that he was tired of babying her, that this is a photo of her bio mom and her 2 sons. That was her bio mom address, and that he contacted her bio mom and she is willing to speak with Amy. He gave her Amy's number. Dad thinks that they will have a great relationship since they are so similar. Amy broke down crying. I ended up in a fight with Dad, called him a monster for doing that to her. He just said he was just tired and left. We ended up leaving and she spent the rest of Christmas crying on my shoulder. She is a mess since that. My younger brothers called me a Grinch for making a scene and ruining Christmas. My mom was silent during the whole thing. My parents have been giving me the cold shoulder since Christmas. I am a 30-year-old male, and I got married 2 weeks ago. I was married before, but it ended after I found out that my older brother Thomas, 34 years old, got involved with my first wife. It was devastating because we were close and had a great relationship. I also helped him so much while he was struggling, and seeing how he repaid me hurts to this very day. I stopped talking to him, and Mom and Dad forced me to keep it a secret, and because I was too weak to argue with them, I just kept my own distance. Then I met my now wife. My family loved and embraced her as their own. Mom and Dad treat her like a queen, which helped repair and solidified my relationship with them. However, as the wedding was approaching, they told me they expected me to invite Thomas. I of course refused, but they kept guilting me about what the relatives and other guests would think and say when they don't see Thomas there. I fought with them about it till the day of the wedding. Turned out they'd invited him behind my back, but I found out and stopped them in time. They came to the wedding looking pissed, asking what we were going to tell people when they ask about Thomas. I told them I'd take care of it. And what I did was take a moment while everyone was paying attention, grabbed the mic and flat out announced this and said, "The reason I didn't invite Thomas to my wedding is because I was worried he'd steal my now wife just like he stole the first one." I said it playfully to not make it sound so tense, but most of the guests looked shocked and started mumbling. Then it went awkwardly quiet for a moment. Then we moved on, but I saw Mom and Dad walk out while looking at me grudgingly. Later, they started lashing out about how I just exposed Thomas and caused him to be shunned by the family in the most hideous of ways. I told them that I already said I didn't want him there, yet they tried to push him on me repeatedly, saying, "What are people going to say?" So I told them the reason why he wasn't there in a playful way, but they, the guests, still got the message. Mom started yelling about how everyone will now look down on and shun Thomas. She called me pathetic and cruel for still punishing him and gradually ruining his life despite him apologizing and trying to reconcile. But in my opinion, some things are just unforgivable. We've been on horrible terms since then. My wife said at least now they're off my back about what people would say about not inviting him.